All right, so I've been back from the Philippines for about a month now, and I wanted to talk about transportation in the Philippines. And what I've learned in my, how long has it been? About 15 years, 16 years of going to the Philippines. So there are many different forms of transportation, and especially on this last trip, I learned some more about the transportation over there and things to avoid. I don't know if I want to call them scammers, but people who will take advantage of foreigners. This happened to me my last trip with taxis. The taxis there, if you're a foreigner, especially traveling alone, like when I flew in to a different terminal than I usually do. I took Singapore Airlines. I usually go for the cheapest, and Singapore Airlines happened to be the cheapest, so I took them and ended up in Terminal 3. Now, usually when I get to the airport in Manila, there's a stand outside with a person taking your information down, a line of taxis there. They'll get information from the taxi and from you, write everything down, to help avoid any problems. And usually you get a legitimate taxi there, although you will get taxis that might not use the meter. That's one thing you'll run into, is taxi drivers who won't use the meter or don't have a meter. But in Terminal 3, when I flew in, there was no one there doing that. And there was somebody there with a pad. I actually thought it was that person, but it turned out to be someone working for the taxi cabs or a certain taxi service. And that guy was trying to take advantage of me or scam me. He's like, taxi over here. I went over there. It was, he called over a taxi. It was a minivan. I got in, and then he came in with a little price list, and he showed it to me. He's like, this is the price. And he showed me the price of 2,500 pesos, which is like $50, maybe a little less than $50. But I was like, no. I got out, and I wasn't even going that far. I was going to a hotel near the airport that was pretty close to the airport. I mean, the planes fly over that hotel, so it wasn't even that far, and 2,500 was ridiculous. I was like, no. I got out of the taxi, and another taxi driver, they were all around trying to get my business, and another one I think quoted me 700, and I took them, which is still probably too much. I mean, not probably, it's still too much. So that happened, and another time, another taxi driver, again, didn't run the meter, and he charged me 1,500. And I should have asked that guy before I got to my location how much it was, but he said 1,500, and I was kind of like, that was the last straw, basically. I learned to, and this is my advice for travelers in the Philippines, foreigners, and even locals: get the Grab app. Use Grab. Grab tells you the price. It's going to be cheaper. You're not going to get, you're less likely to get scammed. They have a place at the airport, just like LAX has a place. Other airports around the world might have places where the rideshare people, in the US, Uber and Lyft, there it's Grab. They'll pick you up, right? And when I took Grab, like there were people, taxi drivers, like, you need a taxi, or maybe not taxi drivers, maybe just the people that get tips or whatever from directing you to a certain taxi. But they were like, trying to get me to go get a taxi, and I'm like, no, I'm using Grab, and it's much better to use Grab. The price, it's going to be a better price than you're going to get the taxi. I know taxis are usually or can be a nice service there in the Philippines. They're cheap, and a lot of times it's easy just to flag a taxi down, and generally when you do that, you won't have a problem. But if you're in a tourist area, if you're landing at the airport, there are definitely a lot of taxi drivers who will try to take advantage of foreigners. So I would advise Grab for most of the time, especially if you're in a tourist area, if you're landing at the airport. If you're just going around town, I've had many good experiences with taxi drivers. I know one time I had a guy, he didn't run the meter, and when I was just going to the mall, which wasn't too far away, and he said, "How much do you usually pay?" I'm like, I don't know. And we sat there in silence for a little while, and finally he's like, 200, which is like $4, super cheap. Especially, if you're used to the high cost of a taxi in the US. And I paid him the 200, but if he would have just said 200, I would have given him a tip, but I didn't give him a tip since he played that little game with me. But definitely I recommend getting the Grab app and using Grab instead of taxis. Unless you're just, decide to go somewhere and you want to flag down a taxi, or that's an easy thing to do, and usually you'll get a legitimate taxi. I took the bus when I was there. The car was going to be, I think, one way. This is from Manila to Subic. It was going to be one way, like $150 or something like that, around $150, maybe a little more. But the bus, I'd have to look up the price, but the bus was a lot cheaper. It was comfortable. It was easy. We got to the bus station, the bus terminal, and I thought we were too late. They were already loading the bus, going to Subic, or going to that direction, which you could get dropped off in Subic. So I was like, oh man, we gotta wait for tickets. We're gonna miss the bus. But they said, just get on the bus. You just get on the bus. The guy comes around to collect tickets. You could buy the ticket, pay him, right there. So you don't have to wait in line to buy tickets. You could just get right on the bus, and it was comfortable. The ride, I have no complaints. The bus was air conditioned, and definitely worth saving the money, I thought, to take the bus. I've taken the bus a couple of times. Depending on where you go, depending on the bus, it may not be as comfortable, but that time I definitely was satisfied with the trip, and it saved me a lot of money. So I'd say take the bus to avoid the high price of getting a car or a van to take you there. There are different types of transportation in the Philippines. You could get a private car with a driver to take you around. You could get a van, bus. If you're just local, taxi, or if it's somewhere outside the big city, like a tricycle taxi, which is cheap. And if you're out in the province, maybe even a pedicab, they got these electric tricycles now that I was using just to go over to McDonald's or 7-Eleven, and they're also pretty cheap. But my experience with ferries, okay, I went to Puerto Galera a while ago, and I was there at the ferry terminal, and there's a bunch of people there trying to sell you like on taking a speedboat. And I had just gotten there. I had, all my money, I still had a lot of money on me, and I just arrived, so I was feeling wealthy, I guess. And so I decided, I'll take the speedboat, and I thought the ferry wasn't going to be what it was. I took the ferry back, and it was actually very comfortable, just like the bus. And they were playing movies, and maybe it took longer than a speedboat, but this is what happened when I took the speedboat. Right? First of all, to get to the terminal where the speedboats were, it was a long ride on a tricycle. I mean, I was like, where are we going? I think it was, I want to say a half an hour, but probably less than a half an hour, maybe 15 minutes, but it was a long drive over there. Then when we got there, I paid the guy, and we got on the boat. The boat went out into the ocean, and then the guy shut off the engine, and we're just bobbing up and down on the waves. I'm like thinking, like, let's go, man. What is he doing? He's sitting there talking on the cell phone. I'm like, what is he doing? After sitting there for about 10 minutes talking on the cell phone, he tells my wife's niece, the people that we paid took the money and left. They didn't give him the money, right? So you need to pay another fee. You need to pay again. And I was pissed. I'm like, no way, hell no. And I'm just pissed. I'm like, man, this was a stupid mistake that I made. They turned around and they went back. They transferred us over to another boat. I didn't have to pay again. They just transferred us over to this other boat, and we went over in this other speedboat. And they were saying, the crew of that boat was saying, oh yeah, those guys, they're scammers, So don't take the speedboat. If there's people offering you some type of thing better than what you're doing, take the taxi. It's better than the Grab. Take the speedboat. It's better than the ferry. Take this instead of the bus. It's better. Don't listen to them, man. They're trying to scam you. First of all, they'll offer you a price that's way high than normal, way higher than normal. It's just, look, the ferry, I took the ferry back. It was comfortable. It was nice. A little bit longer than a speedboat, but hey, it was worth it, right? It was cheaper, and I didn't have to deal with any scammers, so definitely I'd say don't take the ferry, take the bus, use Grab. If you're gonna go around town, the tricycle taxis, they're a little rough, but they're cheap. The electric ones are an easy way to go over to the store if you're lazy and you don't want to walk. And generally, if you're in the city, as long as you're not in like a tourist area or at the airport like that, taxis are fine. You might get someone not using the meter, but generally I've had good experiences with the taxis. When I'm just going around town, when I just flag a taxi down. What other type of transportation? Planes. I flew Air Asia, which is cheap, but you have to pay for everything extra. You want food, you have to pay for food. You want a checked bag, you have to pay for the checked bag. But if you're doing something like a visa run, like I did, it's cheap. I did make a mistake when I flew to Macau. I didn't realize the rules weren't as strict as they are like in the US. Like I didn't even bring any deodorant or hair gel or anything. I thought I could just buy it in Macau, and then I ended up having a hard time finding a place to sell it. And you know, it wasn't as, I was very, very uncomfortable for the first day and a half until I found a place where I could buy deodorant. And it kind of ruined, I would say, not ruined, but it made it less enjoyable to go to Macau. And I only really enjoyed the last day in Macau, but it is cheap. The flights are cheap, and if you don't bring a check bag, if you just pack everything, you know, if you're going on a short little visa run, you know, just there for a couple of days, put everything in your carry-on. I bought a little. After that, I bought a little small deodorant, you know, that travel sized, and you know, other than that, you know, just don't check a bag, don't buy food, and it's a super cheap way to fly out nearby if you're just doing it like a short trip to do a visa run. If you're flying around in the Philippines, there's also cheap flights. It's been too long since I flew to Boracay that I don't remember too much, other than it was a prop plane, and still it was comfortable. But yeah, my recommendations are: use Grab, take the bus, take the ferry. Don't let anybody try and talk you into something else, taking a speedboat, taking a taxi, you know, or some other type of ride. They're usually trying to, again, I hesitate to say scam, but trying to take advantage of you, trying to charge you a higher price than they would a Filipino. So if you're going to the Philippines, download the Grab app. It's easy to use. If you're going somewhere farther away, you could look at the bus. It may be a little, like, I was a little nervous being a foreigner. If I was going there alone, I would have been, you know, maybe had a little more problem, but it wasn't that hard. You know, they told us, you know, you could get on the bus, you know, like, you don't have to wait in the ticket line. You know, you just get on the bus. They're loading right now, and it was quick, relatively. You know, it wasn't any problems. I didn't have to change buses anywhere, and it dropped us off pretty close by our hotel, and then we just got a taxi from the bus terminal there. So it was, in my opinion, it was great considering the money I saved. Would it have been better to have a personal car take me directly from my hotel in Manila to my hotel in Subic? Of course, but I think the bus was great considering how much money I saved. So that's my recommendation. Take the bus, take the ferry, get the Grab app. You want to go around locally, as long as you're outside of a big city. Take a tricycle taxi. It's cheap. I usually tip them because it's so cheap. I just feel like a jerk for not, because man, it could be like 50 cents or something, you know, ridiculous like that. Maybe it's been a while, but so I forget exactly how much it was. But anyways, yeah, that's my recommendation for traveling in the Philippines.